Ghost. An alien sci-fi romance. A Tale in the Colony series. Written by Demelza Carlton. Autonarrated by AI Charlotte from Google. Maia wasn't sure what woke her, but it sure was chilly in the break room tonight. Someone had probably switched off the heating to save power again, forgetting that the night shift nurses napped there when the patient load allowed it. Either that or the old wiring had shorted out again. She'd have to call maintenance to make sure they fixed it this time. Then something touched her tummy, brushing it lightly like a lover might. Problem was, Maia didn't have a lover right now. "Aren't you a delightful specimen?" a male voice crooned. Her eyes flew open. No one called her a specimen and got away with it. Definitely not Mr. Tall, dark and purple, who was staring at her rounded midsection like it was his next meal. Her breath caught in her throat. Either this was a very unfunny joke, she was hallucinating, or there was an honest-to-goodness alien standing over her with a syringe. She squinted at the vial he'd stuck the syringe into. No way was she letting him inject her with a sedative. Stars only knew what he'd done to her before she woke up. Good thing she'd taken those self-defense classes at the hospital back home. The ones for dealing with difficult patients, or particularly violent ones. First she disabled him with a well-placed elbow, before a deft twist transferred the syringe from his hand to hers. She didn't hesitate, she knew a dose meant for her wouldn't kill him. She stabbed the needle deep into his neck, and shoved the plunger down until all the liquid was gone. "Hey you," he slurred, twisting away from her before she could take the syringe out. But the sedative was already taking effect, so he slumped over her legs, a dead, drooling weight. Maia slid out from under him and hopped off the gurney. It was the high-tech sort that could take vital signs continuously, the sort only rich people and private hospitals could afford. And aliens apparently, or at least whack jobs who like to color their skin purple, so they looked like aliens. His scrubs had ridden up so she could see his skin was purple all the way down, not just his face. Weirdo. She heaved the rest of him onto the gurney, then used the restraints to strap him down, just in case he woke up. Even with her massive belly, she was pretty sure she weighed less than him, so the sedative wouldn't keep him out for long. Rifling through the cupboards of the medbay, she found herself a set of scrubs, and some more sedative to keep him docile, just in case. Oh, and some spray-on bandage so she could take that needle out of his neck and stem the bleeding. She dressed quickly, then pulled the syringe out. He didn't even wake when the bandage hit his skin, and she knew from experience that stuff stung. He'd meant to knock her out for a while then. She wanted to shake him awake and ask him what in the universe he'd thought he was doing to her. Nothing good, that's for sure. Maia sighed. Whatever it was, she was free now, and he was her prisoner. That had to count for something. But first, she should get a feel for her surroundings, maybe call the police or something. Yes. That would be sensible. She found an injector gun, and loaded it with sedative. 6 doses for men like the purple prick here. Maybe 7 if she had to shoot someone her size. She hoped she wouldn't have to shoot anyone. She'd probably miss, unless it was at point-blank range, or whatever you called it when you held a weapon to someone's skin. She was a nurse, not a soldier. Gripping the injector in both hands, she headed out of the medbay. Whoever this whack job was, he could certainly afford expensive toys. Sleek, gleaming walls greeted her at every turn, and the seats in his lounge area looked like real leather. She stepped into what could only be called a cockpit, and her heart sank. She was in space, judging by how that moon was growing bigger and bigger in the view screen. Maybe he was an alien and not a whack job after all. No, he was an alien whack job, and that was that. She'd done a cursory search of the living quarters, then a quick glance into the cavernous cargo bay, before she came to the conclusion that she was alone with him on the ship. Well, that made things simpler. The gurney had a hover capability, which made it easy for her to push all the way from the medbay to the airlock. It could even decant him onto the floor, like a load of dirty laundry. She particularly liked that function. Gritting her teeth, she dragged the gurney back out in the corridor and closed the airlock, with the alien inside. Then she engaged the manual lock so he couldn't get out, and sat down to wait. Loud clanging woke her from her unplanned nap, followed by some particularly colorful swaying. So she had successfully locked him in then, and he didn't have some secret way out she hadn't been able to find. She peeked through the little view window. The restraints still held him, and from all the flailing about like a fresh-caught fish, it sounded like he liked being held captive even less than she did. But he'd spied her, and she was pretty sure Fish couldn't feel the sort of fury she saw on his face. "Foolish woman, I demand you release me immediately or you'll regret it," he shouted. Maia cocked her head to the side. No, I don't think I will, thanks. I feel much safer with this big thick airlock door between us." He began to struggle again. "Foolish girl. You don't understand. If you don't release me right now, both you and the specimen will die." So he wasn't calling her a specimen, he was referring to whatever made her belly so round. Maia's breath caught in her throat at the thought of some alien lava bursting out of her. "What did you put in me, you prick?" she demanded, before realizing that she might have answered her own question. He was an alien, and she did look pregnant. "You carry within you a child that combines the best of our two species. If he but survives the birth, he will be a god among men. Now you must release me so I can remove him, before your weak form expires like the other, inferior hosts." Fury flooded her veins. This asshole had not only raped and impregnated her, but he'd done the same to other women, before he'd killed them. He deserved to be cut up into little pieces, while he was still alive of course, and forced to watch them being fed to some primitive predator. A shark maybe. If only there was a shark tank aboard, but she hadn't seen one. Probably for the best. It'd be a lot of effort, and she wasn't sure this asswipe was worth it. "We have a name for things like you," she spat. "Psychopath. Or serial killer. Either way, it sounds like the universe will be a better place if I release you out the airlock. My name is Kronos, foolish girl, and I am a genius. My experiments will create a super race, formed of Titan and human, who will rule the universe." Maia wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. Supervillain, much? "Release me, and I will grant you the honor of bearing more of my master race. Generations hence, they will worship you as their mother goddess." Being kept in a prison and forced to become a broodmare for this psycho's children? In what universe was that something she could possibly want? "Sounds like I'll be doing the universe a favor, purple people-eater," she said, slamming her clenched fist down on the manual release for the outer door. He let out another stream of curses, higher pitched this time as he started to panic, before he was swept out into space. Maybe it made her a bit of a psychopath too, but Maia couldn't bring herself to regret ridding the universe of one more entitled asshole. Besides, she had her own problems to deal with, she thought as she glanced down. There was definitely movement in her belly, which couldn't be good. Time to call an ambulance or the police, if there was such a thing as emergency services in space. Call for help from someone anyway. And when help was on the way, she'd head back to the medbay and do some scans on herself and her passenger. "No," Nihal said. Ghost spread his arms wide. "Is that any way to greet your only brother? What would your boss say if he knew you were turning away good customers?" Nihal yanked a tray of glasses out of the dishwasher and began to put them away. "Vulcan knows as well as I do that you've never been and never will be a paying customer in this place. You only drink cheap beer and we don't serve that here. You only come in here when you want a favor from me. Last time, you asked me to pick color schemes for your new house. I nearly went cross-eyed, trying to tell the difference between dove gray and mist, or 100 different shades of white, to pick the perfect one, only to get a completely different palette for the next room. So whatever it is you want, the answer is no. Ghost knew she couldn't really be serious. They were all the family each other had. Come on, you know you wanted to decorate my house. I'd have picked one color and done the whole house in that. See? I saw that shudder. You liked picking out all those colors. But this isn't about my new house. If I can get you to change your no into a yes, will you give me a drink of the good stuff? She sniffed. That depends. Are you on call tonight? Ghost winced. Yes, but we both know the call-out won't come on Christmas Eve. It'll be tomorrow, when we sit down to lunch or dinner. Besides, I've told you before, the alcohol evaporates when I dematerialize. When I arrive where I'm needed and reassemble myself, I'm as sober as the next man. As if he was secretly trying to prove Nihal's point, the man next to Ghost slipped off his bar stool and crashed to the floor, knocking himself out. The fresh cocktail he'd held in his hand splashed everywhere, soaking Ghost's pants. The scent of fruit syrup and potent spirits wafted up. Ghost wrinkled his nose. I'm not serving alcohol to emergency services personnel who are on duty. If you got called in and your slow reflexes got someone killed, I'd never forgive myself, Nihal said. I'll bet you a virgin mojito you won't change my mind, which means if I win, you buy that drink for me. She grinned. Ew, she was twisty. No wonder she was a water djinn, while he was master of the whirlwind instead. Deal, Ghost said. She turned away from him to serve a couple of customers, before she was back. All right. What is it you want, brother mine? You remember that aircar accident in the tunnels to Nix last week? Nihal frowned. That was nasty. Didn't a bunch of people end up in hospital? The tunnel was closed for hours, some of our patrons couldn't get home. Did you have to do the cleanup for that? Something in her expression started to soften. I was the first on the scene. The other guys needed to get into their EV suits, but you know me, I head straight in, naked, no suit needed. One aircar had crashed into the other, shattering several of the windows. Rapid decompression and loss of atmosphere plus damage to the ventilation units meant a carload of people got decompression sickness before the safety systems kicked in and sealed the holes. First thing I did was turn up the oxygen levels to maximum, which helped. But one passenger, he was just a kid, a teenager, he had heart problems. That's all he managed to tell me before he passed out. Because I was there first, I could relay to the others we needed emergency evac for him first, and he survived. Wanted to see me today to thank me, in fact. Said I'd saved his life. Ghost grinned. It wasn't often he got to be a hero, but it was an awesome feeling. That was what kept him going, even when his search and rescue callouts didn't have such happy endings. So you're a hero. You do a lot of good in emergency services, Ghost. Don't let anyone tell you different. Ghost managed to keep the smile on his face, but it was hard. He didn't want to tell Nihal that he couldn't remember a week when someone hadn't screamed at him for failing to save their partner, child, pet, prized possession when nothing short of a miracle would have saved them, and maybe not even that. Those last days on Tito, when the robot rebellion destroyed half the city, he'd had people screaming at him, blaming him for the deaths he'd arrived too late to prevent. Some of them had actually expected him to run out in front of the robots and get killed trying to retrieve their loved one's corpse. It had been a special kind of hell, working in emergency services back then. So for every time he fought fate and failed, it was nice to have the occasional victory. Especially as there were no robots in the colony at all. The colony was also the only place in the whole Alton system with cocoa beans, though the first crop had been very small and bought in its entirety by one business owner. Do you know a cafe owner called Dulcinea? Ghost asked. Nihal's eyes widened. You mean the woman who owns the chocolatery? She comes in here occasionally. She's quite partial to our pomegranate fizz, especially now we can get real pomegranates to garnish the glass. Ghost nodded. That's her. Well, the owner of the chocolatery anyway. I don't know what she normally drinks. I do know that she's the relieved mother of Pollux, a teenage boy who's lucky to be alive right now. Relieved and so grateful, in fact, that she said I could come in and choose my favorites to fill her biggest box of truffles to take home. Seeing as you like chocolate so much and your taste is oh so much better than mine. He suppressed a grin when he saw she at least had the grace to blush. Well, I thought what better Christmas present for my favorite sister than to ask you to make the selection, so you can enjoy all those chocolates? Nihal leaped over the bar and wrapped him in a tight hug. Yes. 1,000 times yes. You are the best brother, Ghost. He waited for her to get back behind the bar before he said, See? I knew you'd say yes. So does that mean I get that drink? Some sort of virgin, you said? Nihal raised her eyebrows. I didn't think you were into virgins of any kind. Now it was Ghost's turn to blush. Of course his sister knew he was attracted to women who were a little more experienced, who hadn't lived the most sheltered lives. Stars knew neither of them had been particularly sheltered, even on Titan. Ghost had gotten his taste for cheap beer when that's the best he could afford, and drinking the more expensive stuff seemed like forgetting where he'd come from. But this wasn't about women. Make me my drink, woman, he growled. If you weren't giving me a big box of chocolates tomorrow, I'd box your ears for that, Nihal said. She reached into the fridge and pulled out a jar of leaves, then plucked several out of the jar. Ghost couldn't remember the last time he'd smelled fresh mint. Nihal smiled. Wait until you taste the syrup. From real colony honey, harvested in the Aja Dome. The lime juice is still from concentrate, but I hear we'll have our first citrus harvest in a few short months, so it's not long to wait now. As Ghost watched, she assembled the cocktail layer by layer until she reached for the leaf jar again to pluck one more sprig of mint. For my hero of a brother, who gives the best? His comm buzzed. Ghost's heart tightened in his chest as he read the message. I'm needed at work. Sorry sis, I have to go. He gave the drink one last longing look before heading for the door. I'll put in the fridge for you, she called after him. I'll be back for it, he called back. Or so he thought.